If you're heading into the holidays after losing a pet, or you're caring for a pet that you know you may lose soon, this season can feel heavier than anyone around you might realize. Today, we're going to talk about how to move through the holidays with grief and make the season gentler on your heart. So stay tuned. You've reached the Pet Parent Hotline, your lifeline to practical solutions for your toughest pet parenting challenges. I'm your host, Amy Castro, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise and turn expert advice into step-by-step strategies so you can stop chasing your tail and start enjoying life with pets again. Hey there, I'm Amy Castro, and this is the Pet Parent Hotline. The holidays can bring up a lot of emotions, especially when you're missing a pet who is part of your traditions for many years, or you're in that space knowing that a goodbye is coming soon. It can feel like the whole world is celebrating and you're just trying to hold it together. Before we begin, I want to dedicate this episode to Rosy, our listener Debbie's sweet girl who recently crossed the Rainbow Bridge, and to everyone who's listening who is moving through this season with a little more tenderness in your heart. Please know that you're not alone. Today, to help us navigate this season, I'm joined by Nancy Gordon. Nancy is a licensed clinical social worker who has spent decades helping people navigate grief, trauma, and major life transitions. After experiencing several major losses of her own, she actually shifted a big part of her work towards supporting pet parents through the kind of heartbreak that most people really underestimate. Nancy has such a grounded and compassionate approach to these conversations that I really felt like she was the perfect person to help us navigate the holiday seasons with grief. So let's jump in. So Nancy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I really love this podcast. It's a great service.
Well, thank you. That's why we started it. And you were you were my very, very first guest on the podcast. And it was a fantastic episode. And we talked about kind of the same subject, but grief, but we're kind of hitting it today from the holidays perspective. So I appreciate you coming back to talk with us again. And hopefully we can ease things for people through this holiday season. If this is somebody's first holiday, because I know that I'm dedicating this episode to a listener, Debbie, whose dog, Rosy, has recently gone across the Rainbow Bridge, and this will be her first holiday season without Rosy. What do you think helps people get through the holiday season when they're grieving?
Yeah, that's a big question because there's so many variables that enter into the answer. Like, is this their first pet loss, or have they had prior pet losses? Have they gone through it? Was it a sudden, unexpected loss? Was it a traumatic loss? Was it a planned euthanasia? There's so many circumstances. Do you know, and can you share anything about Debbie's that I could speak to directly?
Sure. Well, she actually had reached out to me. I had done a note out to listeners to say, hey, what are some topics she'd like to hear about? And at the time that she reached out, she was at that point where she was really struggling with Rosy, having a hard time taking her out, and trying to make that decision about euthanasia. So that's kind of where she was. And unfortunately, with the way that our schedule was for the show in general, we weren't able to get an episode out before Rosy passed. But so it wasn't sudden. It was something that was kind of coming on for a while for sure. But I think a huge piece of it too is how long Rosy had been part of the family,
Right.
And how much of a part of the family she was.
Absolutely. Yes. How long, how much? Was she the only pet? Is there a pet left? Those are all variables that make a difference in how you deal with that, the first of everything,
Right.
The first holiday, the first date of their birthday, the first date of their death, any other firsts that are particular to your relationship with your pet.
Right.
So in general, I can say that holidays are hard. So let's specifically to holidays, since that's right around the corner.
Right.
Holidays are really hard. They're hard even if you aren't experienced a pet loss. There's so many situations where holidays are difficult for people in general, or there's so much going on with family stuff. So the most, I think, helpful thing people can do for themselves at this time of the first holiday is to prepare. I really believe
Mm,
in preparing yourself. A lot of people don't necessarily want to prepare. They want to just like fly by the seat of their pants and not face thinking about it, because even just thinking about it can be stressful and triggering.
right.
But I have worked with so many clients in the last moments where we have been able to have a session, let's say before a holiday, and we talk about what is your worst fear? What is the most triggering, the saddest, the deepest pain you have that you're aware of about not having your pet with you right now as you're coming into the holiday season. And then asking yourself questions that
Hmm.
prepare you, like, who do you want to be around? Who do you not want to be around? It's okay to say no. In fact, it's important to say no. The more that you prepare yourself and set yourself up for having self-care, for having support, to be able to, know who will be there for you, maybe even talk about it ahead of time with a friend or with a family member. Or if you're going into a holiday with family where there's not much support, not much understanding of pet
Hmm.
loss, these are times where the way you can prepare yourself for handling things on the spot, the better off you'll navigate those situations.
I'm a big planner, but I don't know that I plan to that level sometimes as far as my emotional well-being. I plan logistics of certain things, but I think that's a great suggestion instead of avoiding to strategize how you're going to handle whatever situations are coming your way throughout the
Right,
holiday season. And
right.
that actually kind of ties to something else because I think people they kind of they kind of go one way or the other. They either, throw themselves into it and they hurtle through, or they retreat. And I think it's difficult for people sometimes to find that happy balance of I want to participate, but at the same time, when is enough? When is it okay to say no?
Yes. And the more that you have self awareness and know what your boundaries are, what you can tolerate, what you don't want to tolerate, that's specific to this situation. Let's keep it to that, to the holiday, or to accepting invitations, or how to interact and be present with family. Those are all things that it is hard to find the balance. But the more that you, first of all, I think, put your self care first, it's a way of honoring your pet. Look at it that way. The more that you allow your feelings and your grief to guide you into how to go through this process, the better you'll feel. And you'll
Hmm.
feel better by, for example, instead of saying yes to a social situation that you really don't want to be in, but you
Hmm.
maybe feel a little obligated or you feel torn, you might give yourself some parameters like, I'll go, and you maybe let the host know or your family know, I'm only going to stay about a half an hour, or I'm
Mm.
only going to stay an hour, or I'm going only going to come for dessert. Whatever parameters you're comfortable with, so that you don't have to take sort of the whole thing at once. You can break down the parts that you feel that you'll manage the best.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the people that are like, we're just going to plow forward, they feel like they have to do everything just like it was last year or the year before, whatever, before things changed. And if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. So you're not helping
Right,
yourself. You're not doing your family any good if you're there and you're not fully there. So
right.
being selective in where you feel like you can feel it and participate and at a level of comfort for yourself is a good idea for sure.
Yeah. And I think, I'm thinking of a client of mine, I'm thinking of my own experiences. Like, my sister died in May of this year, and my birthday was June 4th, so she was like a couple weeks earlier than my
Hmm.
birthday. I didn't want to celebrate my birthday. I didn't want to go out for dinner, or I just didn't care about any of that. I was really in the initial stages of shock because it was an unexpected death.
Mm.
And I said to my family, I don't want to celebrate it. I want to postpone it. I want to do it later this year. I don't feel like celebrating. I'm sad. And that's what I did. And another client of mine, same thing with her dog, had passed, and she got invited. It was like, this is a year anniversary, and so around the holidays, so that's even more triggering because now the holiday is associated with that death. And so this was really a difficult time for her and her husband, and they
Mm-hmm.
decided not to go to the family invitations, and they just were honest and said, we're not feeling up to it. The more you can be honest, it does several things. It honors yourself. It doesn't feel good to lie or to pretend or to not be truthful or to hold in what is real for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates even more of a distance between you and that other person or family because it's not authentic. The more authentic you can be, the more people understand. The more people understand, the better able they are to respond. So a big part of my work is educating people about grief, about
Mm-hmm.
how to manage grief, how to manage other people's responses to your grief. I have clients right now actually writing out lists of things that they think they might be asked and how do they want to respond so that
Mm.
they have some idea of what is going to make them feel safe, how to stop the conversation, because people will say, well, when are you going to get another dog? Well, uh, no, that's not a good question for me.
Yeah.
I can't answer that right now. But what I can say is blah, 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 whatever they can share. So you redirect the conversation from something that's uncomfortable to something that maybe will help them understand what you're experiencing and why maybe that question wasn't even helpful.
Right. I think that could be incredibly powerful because as much as we can say, oh, well, how could anybody possibly know what they're going to ask? M- At the
Oh,
holidays, you're generally
oh,
spending time with friends, family, or there's just things that people are going to ask. Like you can prepare for probably 90 to
absolutely.
95% of the things you're going to be asked. And that's where, having lost, I mean, I can't say that I am at the same level, I think, as a lot of people when it comes to a loss of a pet. I don't know if it's just my personality, if it's working in rescue and basically experiencing so much pet loss. But I can say from the example of my husband who passed away, that first holiday is like, you think you got it covered. And I'm one of those ones like, I don't want to show any emotion and da 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 da. And then you just get that one question, and
You
it
can't help it.
just tips you over the edge. Yeah, yeah.
You can't
So I
help
would
it.
never, I don't know that I thought about like how to prepare, how to answer those questions. I just, that would have been super helpful had I known that. I'll keep that in mind for a future situation
Yes,
for sure.
yes. Yeah, and you'll have more because we go through life with its loss after loss. So,
Yeah.
yes, so one of the things that I have clients do is write down some answers that they're comfortable with. They know the question's going to come, and
Mm-hmm.
they know themselves. They are already experiencing. If this is new, if this is fairly new, or even if it's a year, like with my client who is still deep in grief, she knows just talking about it is going to raise those feelings and those tears are going to come and she's not
Right.
going to be able to find the words and to talk. And that's totally normal. And what isn't normal is that people don't know how to respond to that. They don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
respect other people's feelings, other people's sorrow, because we're not educated. We're not taught. We're not trained in our families. We're not trained in schools how to deal with other people's sadness.
Right.
And a lot of times people think the way to deal with it is to try and fix it. They try and
Right.
fix it by saying things. I believe this is one of the reasons that people ask, when are you going to get another pet? Is because they think that's going to fix it. It's
Yeah.
not going to fix it, but at some point it will help. At some point it will be appropriate. At some point I would hope
Right.
that someone would get another pet. But until you're far enough along in that grief where your heart can really take in another animal, You don't want another animal.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving this as sort of an example of how you prepare for those questions. And I also say something that people don't think of. I mean, it's astonishing to me that they don't think of this. I say, have Kleenex, have a handkerchief, be prepared for taking care of yourself. If you can't stop the tears and you don't have Kleenex, your nose is going to run and then you're going to be embarrassed. So
Right.
have the Kleenex. Being prepared doesn't mean you're going to experience all of those things
Hmm.
necessarily, but it means if you do experience any of those things that will make you uncomfortable, will make you even more sad, will make the holiday worse, then you know how to respond.
Right. And, and those kinds of questions, the when are you going to get another dog? People will ask the same level of insensitive questions when a human passes, which this whole idea of when you mentioned your
Yes.
sister, and I'm sorry for your loss of your sister, for sure. Um, this equating human loss or trying to make a connection where, is human loss more or less important, equal, whatever it might be. And I don't want to have that conversation, but very often you're going to face with pet loss people who kind of have that, well, it's just a dog.
Just a
and and
dog.
the, and
Just a
and it's
cat.
not even just the insensitive comments or the insensitive questions, but just the I don't even know how to phrase it, like not allowing persons, like there's something wrong with you because you feel that way about a dog. And so how do you kind of create some boundaries around that? Like where they're wanting to push the issue of, come on, it was just a dog. What do you mean? You're not going to come to Christmas because your dog died? I mean, that's ridiculous. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and that's so difficult to deal with because you're already grieving, and then that is almost like another loss. When
Yeah.
people respond that especially family, people that you love and they love you and they care about you, but they don't
Hmm.
get it and they don't even respect it. Like that's what you're talking about. It goes even a
Yes.
deeper level of not respecting that this pet was that important to you. The more that you can look at sharing a response that is not confrontive, you don't want to
Hmm.
confront the other person, but you want to let them know what's behind why they don't understand.
Right.
You can say, this is what my pet meant to me. This is the relationship I had with my pet. And it's a big loss to me. It's
Yeah.
like this pet was like your child, like how you would feel if you lost your child. Because there's, as we've discussed before, pet owners and pet parents. Pet parents will see their pets, experience their pets,
Hmm.
and behave towards their pets as a family member,
Yeah.
and so when you have any family member that you lose, the more that you can explain to people that say things like it's just a dog, it'll pass, is to say it wasn't just a dog. This dog or this cat or this parrot, whatever, meant this to me,
Yeah. And
whatever
I
that
would,
is.
yeah, whatever it might be. But one of the things that I would say too, as a communication person, sometimes by trying to equate it to something they can relate to, you can escalate the situation or now create a new debate. Like the example of the I feel this way about
Human
my
pet.
pet the way that you would feel about that. And it's
You're
like,
absolutely
now
right.
you're arguing people and animals. I think purely sharing, this is the way I feel about my pet. This is the decision that I have made, whether it's not coming to Christmas dinner or whatever it might be. And, I'm asking you to respect that, period. And then just let them live with it. I think too many times we try to make it palatable for the other person, and it's not about them.
I guess I think what we're both pointing out is that in my mind, sort of the ideal goal, which is that people educate others through their own expression of pet loss. That's what
Hmm.
my book is all about. And there are
Yeah.
going to be people who are just not going to get it.
Yeah.
And it's not worth your time and difficulty experiencing that from someone that you care about.
Yeah.
So you don't go there. But
Yeah.
in general, I think the more that you can share how you feel authentically, the more people can support you. Another way to respond to somebody who says a question like, it's just a dog, why don't you come to Christmas? You can say, I understand you might not understand my experience or my reasoning or how deep my grief is right now, but I hear that you want to support me. I hear that you want me
Yeah.
to be present, that you want me to be part of this, that maybe my not coming is a loss for you. And so what you can do at that point is acknowledge that and acknowledge that you hear in some level that they want you to feel better. They want to comfort you. They want you to be
Mm.
there. And you can say, what you could do that would help me is, how
Mm.
you could support me is, and whatever that is
Yeah.
for you. Like you could say, maybe we could have a short FaceTime call when a certain thing happens at the family event that you feel like you could participate in that. You don't have to be there. So
Mm-hmm.
you find these ways to sort of compromise. Like maybe you're conflicted. You really do want to be there, but the idea of a whole dinner and all this time is too much. Then you break it down to the parts that you can tolerate.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a great approach too, from the standpoint of, let's say you did want to go and participate, but you were like, maybe you just have that one relative who you know is going to be insensitive about it. And so therefore it's like, here's how you can support me by talking to Aunt Sue before I get there and tell her not to bring up the dog at all. But I love that idea, because most of the time when people say things that come across as insensitive, their intent is not to hurt you, not to be insensitive,
No,
not to be
no.
callous and cold. So what you're
Right.
doing by responding in that the way that you just gave in that example, is you're bypassing what they said and getting to their intent. And it's like, you can see when you do that for people and you help them in that way, you can see the
Yes.
relief, like, oh,
Yes.
good, they get what I'm trying to do, even though your technique really sucked and you need some
Right.
work on that.
Right,
But
exactly.
yeah,
That's beautiful. And your example is exactly what I was talking about earlier about preparing. So
yeah,
you gave a beautiful example there of asking Aunt Sue ahead of time to say, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want any people to ask me questions. I don't want this certain person to be interacting with me. If you see me cornered with Uncle Joe, can you come over and politely interrupt the
yeah,
conversation?
run some interference for me.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about
yeah,
preparing and
yeah,
asking for support, asking for what you need, even
yeah,
for people who maybe are not that psychologically minded or not that aware, self-aware. One of the things that I really believe is kind of a gift and a burden of pet loss is it will bring up so much stuff that you maybe didn't even know was there.
mm-hmm,
And so you now have the opportunity to become more aware. And this
yeah,
is especially true in anticipatory grief, because I call anticipatory grief, pet loss and grief, the window of opportunity, because this is where you can really change the trajectory of how your post-loss grief is going to go
mm-hmm.
by how you handle that experience.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about that, because not everybody has already gone through the loss. I think a lot of times when people are anticipating losing a pet, either at the holidays or soon after the holidays, they go through this kind of, how can I make this the most perfect? How can I create these lifetime memories for myself and my family? And I think we do that at the holidays sometimes anyway, and oftentimes doesn't work out as well as we could. But how can you relieve some of that pressure to do all these, like the last time we're going to do this, the last time we're going to do that with a pet?
Yeah, that is one of the hardest pieces of the holiday colliding with perhaps the last days, weeks, months, even hours. It could be anywhere on that continuum. So
Yeah.
I think first, what's most important are two things to really consider. There is no perfect. There's no
Mm,
perfect in anything. And so what perfect then means is what it means to you in the context of this situation. So the variables may have changed from September to December. And
Mm-hmm.
so in September, you could have made the holiday season or leading up to the holidays a different experience that would have been maybe more helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time you're facing the month before, the weeks before, there isn't that same window. So what you do is you change your strategy.
Mm.
Basically, you change your mindset. And I'll tell you, one of the questions that got me through my loss, the 2 years before I lifted Toaster up, was the start of my anticipatory grief. She was 17. So at
Wow.
15, I started seeing Rainbow Bridge, and it was far. It was far enough that it wasn't painful every day, but I was seeing it moving over
Mm-hmm.
time over those 2 years. And when it got close enough, one of the questions that I asked myself, and I tell this to all my clients, if you think about this whole situation, what do you think you might feel guilty about or regret
Mm.
doing or not doing, saying or not saying, the treatment or not the treatment? And that's a trickier issue because sometimes that's a no-win situation. You choose treatment versus euthanasia, and you do one or the other, and neither way seems like it was a win.
Right.
But I remember even taking Toaster to the vet. Some of those times, like it was unclear. Is this emergency? Is this an ER vet? Is this an urgent care vet? Is this I can just wait till tomorrow and see my regular vet? I would ask myself, what could happen if I didn't do this? And how would I feel about that? And so sometimes that would direct the decisions that I would make. And that's even something that could be a question for all the things we've talked about so far. That could be a question that can help you decide, what will I feel if I don't go to the family dinner? And then how can you bridge that to a decision that you can live with?
Yeah, that's a good question because when you said that, the first thing that I thought about was I skip a family event because I'm not feeling it, but I could have possibly made it work in some form or fashion, but I didn't. And then, God forbid, you lose a family member that you don't get to see again and then you're going to have to live with that. So it's like the more you can think through, of course, you can't think through every possibility, but,
Right.
think through some possibilities is, your 94-year-old grandfather's going to be there. It's probably worth at least going for a little bit. Then you can leave, but at least you went and you saw grandpa and you got to wish him Merry Christmas. And so you can sort of have the best
Yes.
of both worlds if you think it through. It's that strategizing that's so important.
Yes, it really is.
What about from the standpoint of anticipatory grief? We know that we're going to lose a pet and we're not strategizing, but we're worrying about it instead. And then we end up ruining the whole holiday season for ourselves because all we did was worry our way through it about something that might happen in January or February or whatever it might be. Is there a way
Mhm.
to kind of acknowledge the worry and put it aside, or just don't think about it, or what for the people who are in that situation?
So I don't think it's good to put anything aside. I think you can address it briefly, even superficially, without having to put it aside, but still acknowledging the worry. One of the most important things I think people need to do for themselves when they're facing this kind of loss is to have self-compassion,
Mm.
to practice self-care or develop better self-care. And so self-care is about how you are present with your pet during this time of anticipatory grief, how you take care of yourself at the same time. That's a tricky balance. We tend to take care of our pets more than we take care of ourselves. I know that's a lot of what I experienced with Toaster and Pink. It's hard, but I did learn that the cost of not taking care of myself was great.
Yeah.
And so in this time when you're worrying, this is a good example to use as how do you take care of yourself when you're so anxious, when you're so worried, when you're ruminating, when you're projecting into the future. And so one of the best things to do for that is to ground yourself and get back into the present moment. Like this isn't happening now. It may or may not happen, but this is what I have now. And so now I'm going to take my dog for a walk. Now I'm going to go to the beach. Now I'm going to take a nap with my cat. Whatever it is that you feel will ease that worry. I mean, for goodness sakes, animals lower our blood pressure. Research has shown how much healing pets provide for us. So one of the things that I did a lot when I had anxiety with toe-strip pain, because that was also during a time when I was recovering from my car accident and I had to close my business, and that was a whole different life, was I would sit down with my pets and I would pet them and bask in that unconditional look of love. I mean, just even looking in their eyes and having that present moment with them can really calm down so much. And then, of course, the other thing to do in terms of self-care is a good support system and to be
Mhm.
able to utilize the support system. And there are times where it's really most advantageous for that support system to be a professional, at least in addition to whatever other support you have. But a
Mhm.
lot of people don't have very much support. I have had so many clients who come to me and they have no one to talk to. They
Right.
have no one who understands their pet grief, anticipatory or post loss. And so that's a place to start, especially if you don't have a support system where in those moments where you're worrying and it's getting in the way of your being present with your pet or yourself or taking care of yourself, then it's important to find that professional support.
Yeah, definitely. You made a key point there. You could have a ton of people in your life, but that doesn't mean anyone's going to be the right person. It's
Yeah,
like if they don't got it to give, they don't got it to give. So don't seek it there because you're just going to
right,
end up worse off than if you hadn't sought it in the first place. That
right.
actually brings up a great point. I know that in addition to you being available as a source of support, you also have a lot of resources for people who are going through this. I know you've got a book in the works. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, the book is called I Miss You Already, Preparing for the Unbearable Loss of Your Pet. So as in my title, you can see that's the big heart of my work is helping people prepare for this loss. It's not even just preparing for when they're gone. It's about dealing with them while they're here and they're leaving.
Right.
They're leaving, human or pet. That's what anticipatory grief is about. And it's such an amazing time that can change so many things, that can heal you and your pet. I've had a client who contacted me the day before his mobile vet appointment to put his dog down, contacted me for help. I didn't know him. We had a session. I helped to redirect him to learn how to be present with his feelings and still take care of his dog and lift his dog up instead of put his dog down. And it was amazing. So those are the things that can happen in an anticipatory grief. And that's why I say preparing is not just for when they're gone, preparing for while they're here and as you let them go, how you let them go. All of that
Hmm.
makes such a difference. So there's going to be an online course that will come out with a book and a companion journal that will be more than just journal prompts. It will be a way to really go through the book at a deeper level on your own. And of course, people can contact me, for individual work, emailing me or calling. That's probably the fastest way. And another way to get to know more about my work and about anticipatory grief is to follow me on my Instagram. My Instagram is dedicated entirely to pet loss and grief.
Okay, that's great. And I hope people go back and listen to when you were on the show back in 2023, because so much of what you said and so much of your advice about the anticipatory grief piece, most of the time people find us and find these episodes after the fact, and there's so much regret, and I wish I'd done this, and this went wrong and that went wrong, and now they're trying to live with it basically, or overcome it. And I remember when we recorded that episode, it's like such a profoundly different way of approaching the loss of a pet and a different way of planning and thinking about it, that I think it can be transformational in how it changes that experience for you and the pet. I
It
mean,
doesn't have to be traumatic. I've had
yes.
people come to me and work with me for months before in the anticipatory grief experience. And we do create the whole process leading up to the lifting up and the lifting up itself and the post-loss. I wrote this book because my experience has been over 45 years of loss and transformational grief with clients and with myself. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of information that will help the grief work post-loss. So it will help people who have already lost or people who are anticipating the impending loss. Understanding grief, understanding your grief, learning the tools how to navigate it, and to not be afraid of grief. Not be afraid of those feelings. That fear is what makes people resist grief. It's not the grief itself. Grief actually is not that hard. About 50% of the grief work is allowing the grief to come out in the
Mm-hmm.
various forms it comes out, at the pace it comes out, with the triggers it comes out. And then the other 50% is learning how to respond to that grief.
Yeah.
I'd like to leave you with my favorite quote, one of my favorite mentors, Winnie the Pooh, because loss can feel unbearable, but you can learn how to transform loss into love, an expanded heart, and grief into growth, personal growth. And Winnie the Pooh said, always remember, you are braver than you believe. You are stronger than you seem. You are smarter than you think. And you are loved more than you will ever know. And to that, I will add, your beloved pet will always be with you. The passing is not the end of your relationship with your pet.
Right. Well, Nancy, I think that's a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much for being here and having
Thank
a difficult conversation, but I think one that so many pet parents are needing to hear right now, especially at this time of the year.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
for the opportunity.
All right. And thank you to everybody for listening to another episode of the Pet Parent Hotline. You know, if this season is feeling heavier than ones in the past, please know that we are thinking of you, that we're here for you. If you want to reach out to Nancy, we're going to have her contact information. And we're also here for you in our Pet Parent Hotline Insiders group. So feel free to join the group, share your feelings, ask your questions. And together, I think we can all get through this holiday season and hopefully experiencing the joy along with the grief, because that's what life is about. So thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Thanks for listening to the Pet Parent Hotline. If you enjoyed the show, don't keep it to yourself. Text a friend right now with a link and tell them I've got a show that you need to hear, and ask them to let you know what they think. And remember, your pet's best life starts with you living yours. So be sure to take good care of yourself this week and your pets.